The question of what constitutes the ultimate defense in the world of Minecraft has echoed through the blocky landscapes since the earliest days of survival. It is a query whispered in the flickering torchlight of deep mines, debated in the bustling marketplaces of multiplayer servers, and pondered in the quiet solitude of a single-player world. For many, the answer has long been a single, shimmering word: diamond. For generations of players, the brilliant blue hue of diamond armor has been the pinnacle of protection, a symbol of wealth, power, and unwavering resilience. To be clad in diamond was to be a walking fortress, a bulwark against the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune and the gnashing teeth of the night's most fearsome creatures. The journey to acquire a full set of this coveted gear was a rite of passage, a testament to a player's dedication and courage. It involved countless hours spent delving into the treacherous depths of the overworld, battling hordes of monsters, and navigating labyrinthine cave systems, all in pursuit of those rare, sparkling veins of diamond ore. The moment of finally crafting that last piece of diamond armor, the chestplate, and donning the full set was a moment of pure, unadulterated triumph. The world felt different. The players stood taller, their confidence soaring as they faced the world with a newfound sense of security. The familiar green of the health bar seemed less fragile, and the cacophony of monster growls less intimidating. Diamond armor was not just a set of items. It was an achievement, a statement, and for a long time, the undisputed champion of personal defense. However, the world of Minecraft is one of constant evolution. New biomes are discovered, new creatures emerge from the shadows, and with them, new materials and technologies are unearthed. The seemingly unshakable reign of diamond was destined to be challenged, and that challenge came from the fiery, desolate heart of the Nether, a dimension of perpetual twilight and unimaginable danger. It came in the form of a substance as dark as the Nether's obsidian core and as resilient as its ancient bedrock, netherite. Forged in the infernal fires of the Nether, netherite is not simply mined. It is created through a complex and perilous process. It requires venturing into the most dangerous corners of the Nether to find ancient debris, a rare and elusive block buried deep within the netherrack. This debris must then be smelted into netherite scraps, which are then combined with gold ingots to create netherite ingots. And finally, a single netherite ingot is used to upgrade a piece of diamond armor at a smithing table. This laborious process, fraught with peril at every turn, suggests that netherite is something special, something beyond even the legendary strength of diamond. Its dark, intimidating appearance, a stark contrast to the brilliant sparkle of diamond, speaks of a different kind of power, a more profound, more unyielding resilience. The arrival of netherite has thrown the long-established hierarchy of armor into question. A new king has potentially ascended the throne, but the old monarch does not yield its legacy so easily. The question that now burns in the minds of every serious Minecraft survivor is this: is netherite truly the strongest armor? Is the arduous journey to acquire it justified by a tangible increase in protection? Or is it merely a marginal improvement, a status symbol for the most dedicated players, with diamond armor still offering a perfectly viable and far more accessible form of top-tier defense? To answer this question definitively, we must move beyond mere speculation and anecdotal evidence. We must subject both diamond and netherite armor to a rigorous, scientific examination, a head-to-head showdown where every aspect of their defensive capabilities is meticulously tested and analyzed. This is not just a comparison. It is a quest for truth, a definitive answer to the question of which armor reigns supreme in the world of Minecraft. Our investigation will be conducted in a controlled environment, a specially constructed laboratory world where we can isolate variables and ensure the accuracy of our results. We will create a series of standardized tests, each designed to evaluate a specific aspect of armor strength. We will not limit our definition of strength to a single metric. True strength in Minecraft is a multifaceted concept. It encompasses not only raw damage reduction, the ability to shrug off the blows of a zombie or the sting of a skeleton's arrow, but also durability, the armor's capacity to withstand repeated punishment before breaking. It also includes special properties, unique advantages that one armor type might possess over the other. Our analysis will be broken down into a series of rounds, each focusing on a different aspect of this complex equation. We will begin by examining the base stats of an enchanted diamond and netherite armor, establishing a baseline for their defensive capabilities. Then, we will delve into the transformative power of enchantments, creating perfectly enchanted sets of both armor types and pitting them against each other in a series of grueling combat trials. We will also test their resilience against the myriad environmental hazards that the world of Minecraft throws at the player, from the searing heat of lava to the bone jarring impact of a long fall. Finally, we will conduct a brutal durability test, a war of attrition to see which armor set can endure the most punishment before succumbing to the relentless forces of wear and tear. Throughout this exhaustive process, we will meticulously record and analyze every piece of data, presenting our findings in a clear and comprehensive manner. Our goal is to leave no stone unturned, no variable untested. By the end of this investigation, we will have a definitive, data-driven answer to the age-old question. The scientific showdown between diamond and netherite is about to begin. Let the trials commence. We begin our investigation with a foundational analysis of the raw, unadulterated strength of an enchanted diamond and netherite armor in this initial round of testing. We will strip away the complexities of enchantments and focus solely on the inherent defensive properties of these two legendary materials. This will provide us with a crucial baseline, a clear understanding of the fundamental differences in their protective capabilities before we introduce the game-changing variable of magical enhancements. To conduct these tests, we have constructed a state-of-the-art testing facility within our laboratory world. This facility includes a variety of specialized chambers, each designed to simulate a specific type of threat that a player might encounter in their adventures. We have a combat arena where we can spawn various hostile mobs, a projectile testing range for evaluating defense against ranged attacks, and a series of contraptions for inflicting other forms of damage. Our test subject is a standard player character with a full health bar of 20 hearts, and we will meticulously record the damage taken from each attack, measuring it in half-heart increments. First, let us examine the individual pieces of each armor set. The crafting recipes for diamond armor are well known to any seasoned player. A full set requires a total of 24 diamonds, a significant investment of time and effort. The diamond helmet requires 5 diamonds, the chest plate 8, the leggings 7, and the boots 4. Each piece, when crafted, radiates a brilliant cyan light, a beacon of safety in a hostile world. Netherite armor, on the other hand, cannot be crafted directly. It is the result of upgrading diamond armor. Each piece of diamond gear must be taken to a smithing table along with a single netherite ingot. This process preserves any enchantments on the diamond armor, a crucial feature that we will explore in a later round of testing. For now, our focus is on the unenchanted versions. Aesthetically, the transformation is dramatic. The bright, cheerful blue of diamond is replaced by a deep, menacing charcoal gray, a color that seems to absorb the light around it. It is an armor that speaks not of hope and brilliance, but of unyielding strength and grim determination. Now, let us delve into the numbers that define the defensive power of these armor sets. In Minecraft, armor provides protection through two key stats: armor points and armor toughness. Armor points, represented by the armor bar above the player's health bar, directly reduce the amount of damage taken from most sources. A full set of diamond armor provides a total of 20 armor points, filling the armor bar completely. This translates to an 80% damage reduction. A full set of netherite armor also provides 20 armor points, meaning it also offers the same 80% base damage reduction. At first glance, this might suggest that the two armor sets are equally protective. However, this is where the second stat, armor toughness, comes into play. Armor toughness is a hidden stat that provides additional protection against high damage attacks. Each point of armor toughness reduces the damage of a powerful blow by a small amount, and this reduction is applied after the initial 80% reduction from armor points. Diamond armor has a total of 8 armor toughness points per piece. Netherite armor, on the other hand, boasts a significantly higher total of 12 armor toughness points, 3 per piece. This 50% increase in armor toughness is the first clear statistical advantage that netherite holds over diamond. But what does this mean in practical terms? How does this extra toughness translate to survivability in the face of real threats? To answer this, we must move from theory to practice and subject our armor sets to the unforgiving reality of combat. Our first test will be a classic encounter, a one-on-one battle with a standard zombie. Zombies are a common threat in the overworld, and their melee attacks are a good starting point for our analysis. We spawn a single zombie in our combat arena and allow it to attack our test subject, who is wearing a full set of an enchanted diamond armor. The zombie's attack on an unarmored player deals 3 hearts of damage. With the diamond armor equipped, we observe the damage taken from each blow. After a series of 10 attacks, we record an average damage of 0.6 hearts per hit. This is a significant reduction, a clear demonstration of the power of diamond armor. Next, we repeat the experiment with a full set of an enchanted netherite armor. Again, we subject our test subject to 10 attacks from the zombie. The result is almost identical to the diamond armor test, with an average damage of 0.6 hearts per hit. This is because the zombie's attack is not powerful enough to significantly engage the armor toughness stat. For low damage attacks, the 80% damage reduction from the 20 armor points is the primary factor, and since both armor sets have the same number of armor points, they perform equally well in this scenario. But what about more formidable foes? Let's escalate the threat. We now introduce a Vindicator into our combat arena. Vindicators are fearsome villagers that wield iron axes and deal a devastating amount of damage. An unarmored player would be quickly dispatched by a Vindicator's ferocious assault, as each blow can inflict up to 19 hearts of damage on normal difficulty. This is where armor toughness should start to make a difference. We first test the diamond armor. Our test subject, clad in the brilliant blue armor, bravely faces the Vindicator. The Vindicator's axe swings with incredible force, but the diamond armor absorbs a significant portion of the impact. We record the damage taken from each hit and find that the average damage is around 3.8 hearts. This is a massive reduction from the potential 19 hearts, but it is still a substantial amount of damage that would quickly overwhelm an unprepared player. Now it is time for the netherite armor to face the same challenge. Our test subject, now clad in the dark, imposing netherite gear, steps into the arena. The Vindicator attacks with the same ferocity, but the result is noticeably different. The blows still land with a sickening thud, but the damage inflicted is visibly lower. After a series of attacks, we calculate the average damage to be around 3.2 hearts per hit. This is a clear improvement over the diamond armor. The extra 4 points of armor toughness provided by the netherite set are now making a tangible difference, shaving off a crucial half a heart of damage from each of the Vindicator's powerful strikes. This might seem like a small difference, but in a prolonged battle, those half hearts can be the difference between life and death. To further explore the role of armor toughness, we will now conduct a test with one of the most feared explosions in Minecraft, the Creeper, a point blank creeper explosion can deal a massive 49 hearts of damage to an unarmored player on normal difficulty, an almost guaranteed instant death. We will place our test subject directly next to a creeper and detonate it. First, with the diamond armor, the explosion is deafening, and the screen shakes violently. When the smoke clears, we check the health of our test subject. They have survived, but just barely. The diamond armor has reduced the damage significantly, but the player is left with only a few hearts remaining. The damage taken is approximately 17 hearts. It is a testament to the power of diamond armor that the player survived at all, but it was a very close call. Now, we repeat the experiment with the netherite armor. The setup is identical. The creeper explodes with the same terrifying force. But the outcome is different. The player is still heavily damaged, but they are in a much better condition than with the diamond armor. The damage taken is approximately 14 hearts. The netherite armor has absorbed an additional 3 hearts of damage from the blast. This is a very significant difference. A clear demonstration of the superiority of netherite's armor toughness when it comes to mitigating high-damage attacks. In a real-world scenario, this extra survivability could give a player the precious moments they need to heal and escape from a dangerous situation. We will also conduct a series of tests with ranged attacks. Skeletons are another common and persistent threat, and their arrows can be a major nuisance. A skeleton's arrow deals a variable amount of damage depending on the draw strength of the bow. At full draw, an arrow can deal up to 10 hearts of damage to an unarmored player. We will subject our test subjects to a volley of arrows from a dispenser, ensuring a consistent damage output. First, with the diamond armor, the arrows clatter against the blue plates, but some of the force still gets through. We record the average damage per arrow to be around 2 hearts. Next, we test the netherite armor. The arrows strike the dark armor with a dull thud. The damage taken is slightly lower, around 1.8 hearts per arrow. The difference is not as dramatic as with the creeper explosion, as the damage from a single arrow is not high enough to fully engage the armor toughness. However, over the course of a prolonged firefight with multiple skeletons, this small advantage would add up, leaving the netherite-clad player with more health in the long run. Finally, we will examine one more innate property that sets netherite armor apart from its diamond counterpart: knockback resistance. Knockback is a force that pushes a player backward when they are hit by an attack. It can be a major problem, especially when fighting near ledges or in tight spaces. Diamond armor offers no inherent knockback resistance. When our diamond-clad test subject is hit by a zombie, they are knocked back a noticeable distance. This can be disruptive to combat and can put the player in a precarious position. Netherite armor, however, has a built-in knockback resistance stat. Each piece of netherite armor provides a 10% reduction in knockback, for a total of 40% with a full set. This is a unique and powerful advantage. When we repeat the zombie attack test with the netherite armor, the difference is immediately apparent. The player is barely moved by the zombie's blows. They can stand their ground, maintaining their position and continuing their assault without being constantly pushed around. This knockback resistance is a game-changer in many combat situations. It allows a player to control the battlefield, to push forward aggressively against a horde of enemies, or to hold a strategic choke point without fear of being dislodged. It is a subtle but incredibly effective form of protection, one that diamond armor simply cannot offer. Based on this first round of testing, the initial verdict is clear. While both diamond and netherite armor offer the same base level of 80% damage reduction from their 20 armor points, netherite pulls ahead into crucial areas. Its superior armor toughness provides significantly better protection against high-damage attacks, as demonstrated in our Vindicator and Creeper tests. This means that a player wearing netherite armor is far more likely to survive a catastrophic event, like a point-blank explosion or a powerful melee strike. Furthermore, netherite's unique knockback resistance gives the player a significant tactical advantage in combat, allowing them to maintain control of their position and fight more effectively. So, even in their unenchanted forms, netherite armor has already established a clear superiority over its diamond predecessor. But this is just the beginning of our investigation. The true potential of any armor set is only unlocked through the power of enchantments. In our next round of testing, we will explore how these magical enhancements interact with our two contenders, and whether they can widen the gap between them, or perhaps even level the playing field. The scientific showdown continues. The obsidian frame shimmered, a violent purple wound torn in the very fabric of the world. Its low, guttural hum vibrated through the stone floor of the workshop, a constant, menacing thrum that spoke of alien geometries and blistering heat. Standing before it, clad in the brilliant, hard-won scion of full diamond armor, I felt not a sense of accomplishment, but a profound and unsettling inadequacy. The diamond gear, once the absolute pinnacle of my aspirations, now felt like a child's costume. It was a temporary measure, a fragile shell I had painstakingly assembled only to realize it was merely the chrysalis for something far greater, something darker and more profound. The quest I had embarked upon was not for the strongest armor of the known world, but for the strongest armor possible, a theoretical absolute forged from the most hostile environment imaginable. The whispers on ancient trade routes and the fragmented texts recovered from sun-bleached desert temples all spoke of it, a material born not of the cool, familiar earth, but of the fiery, tormented soul of the nether itself. Netherite, the name alone felt heavy, dense. Like a chunk of cooled magma, it was the next step. It was the only step. The diamond armor I wore was not the goal. It was the key, the vessel that would be sacrificed and reborn in the unholy fires of that shimmering portal. My inventory was meticulously prepared. A testament to weeks of planning, stacks of cooked steak, a bell with an infinity enchantment, a water bucket that would be useless in the dimension I was about to enter but provided a sliver of psychological comfort, and a shield, its wooden face already scarred from countless battles. Most importantly, I carried a full stack of beds. An odd choice for a dimension where sleep was a literal impossibility, an act that would be met with a cataclysmic explosion, but that was precisely their purpose. They were not for rest, they were for demolition. They were my primary tool in the hunt for the impossibly rare ancient debris, the fossilized remnants of some long-dead civilization, the raw ingredient for the legend I sought to create. With a final, deep breath that did little to calm the frantic beating of my heart, I stepped through the rippling purple curtain. The world dissolved into a nauseating, kaleidoscopic swirl of violet and black. The humming intensified into a deafening roar, and then, just as suddenly as it began, it ceased. I was standing on a floating island of angry, red rock, the air thick with the stench of sulfur and decay. This was the Nether. A vast, cavernous hellscape stretched out before me, a subterranean world with a ceiling of impenetrable netherrack so far above that it was lost in the hazy, crimson gloom. Rivers and vast lakes of lava flowed like water, casting a perpetual, blood-red twilight over everything. The air itself seemed to vibrate with a palpable malevolence. Distant, mournful cries echoed through the cavern, the ghostly lament of ghasts, huge, weeping specters that drifted through the air like malevolent clouds. The ground beneath my feet was a patchwork of biomes, each more hostile than the last. To my left, a forest of giant, crimson fungi pulsed with an eerie, organic light, its floor a carpet of red nylium. Strange, pig-like creatures, the hoglins, snorted and stamped through the undergrowth, their brutish forms radiating aggression. To my right, a vast, desolate plain of soul sand stretched towards a distant lava fall. The sand seemed to writhe, its surface covered in tormented faces, and with every step I took upon it, my movements became sluggish, as if invisible hands were grasping at my ankles, trying to pull me down into the suffocating earth. This was the Soul Sand Valley, a graveyard of lost souls, and the air here was a chilling, spectral blue. I had to conquer this place. I had to delve into its very bones and tear out its secrets. My first task was to secure a foothold. I tunneled into the side of the netherrack island, creating a small, defensible alcove. I blocked the entrance with a wall of cobblestone, a familiar, comforting gray in this world of angry reds and purples. This small, cramped space would be my sanctuary, my base of operations in this infernal dimension. From here, I would launch my expeditions into the deep, my search for the 4 pieces of ancient debris required to craft the first netherite ingot. Just 4 pieces. It sounded so simple. but I knew it would be one of the most arduous tasks I had ever undertaken. Ancient debris did not spawn in veins like diamond or iron. It was scattered randomly, hidden deep within the netherrack, and it never spawned exposed to the air. It had to be mined for blind. The strategy was simple in theory, but terrifying in practice. I would dig down to the optimal layer around y equals 15 and then begin strip mining, a tedious process of digging long, straight tunnels in the hope of stumbling across the rare blocks. But that was slow, inefficient. The real method, the one that promised results but courted death at every turn, was bed mining. I clutched the stack of beds in my inventory. Their cheerful red was a stark contrast to the grim reality of their purpose. Each one was a potential explosion, a tool of mass excavation that could clear out a huge area of netherrack in an instant, revealing any hidden debris. It was also a tool that could, and very likely would, kill me if I made a single mistake. After a meal of steak to fortify myself, I began my descent. The diamond pickaxe bit into the netherrack. Its familiar, rhythmic crunch a small comfort in the oppressive silence of my tunnel. The rock was soft, yielding easily. I dug a straight staircase down, 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 keeping a close eye on my coordinates. Y equals 30, y equals 20, finally, y equals 15. This was the sweet spot, the layer where ancient debris was most commonly found. The air here was even hotter, the distant roar of lava more pronounced. I was deep in the belly of the beast. I carved out a small chamber and began my first tunnel. The work was grueling, monotonous. I dug in a straight line, my eyes scanning the newly exposed walls for the distinctive, swirling texture of ancient debris. An hour passed, then to nothing. The only break in the monotony was the occasional pocket of gravel that would come cascading down, threatening to suffocate me, or the sudden, terrifying sound of a ghost shriek from somewhere above. I knew that at any moment, one of its fireballs could blast through the netherrack, opening my tunnel to the horrors outside. The psychological toll was immense, the constant, low hum of the nether, the oppressive heat, the gnawing sense of being hunted. It was a pressure cooker for the mind. After what felt like an eternity, with my inventory filling with stacks of useless netherrack, I decided it was time to escalate. It was time to use the beds. I chose a spot at the end of my long tunnel. The process had to be precise. I dug a small alcove, just 2 blocks deep. I placed the bed inside. Then I retreated a safe distance down the tunnel, about 6 or 7 blocks, and quickly placed a block of cobblestone in front of me to act as a shield. My heart hammered against my ribs. I pulled out my bow and aimed at the bed. There was a small, almost invisible sliver of the bed's hitbox visible from my position. I took a breath, held it, and loosed the arrow. The arrow struck the bed, and for a split second, nothing happened. Then the world erupted. A deafening explosion tore through the tunnel, a cataclysmic force that shook the very foundations of the nether. The cobblestone block in front of me shuddered but held, absorbing the brunt of the blast. The screen flashed white, and my health bar dipped alarmingly, even with my diamond armor. The air was filled with the acrid smell of burnt wool and stone. When the dust settled, I cautiously mined away my shield block. The tunnel ahead was gone. In its place was a massive, cavernous crater, its walls blackened and scorched. The explosion had cleared out a huge area, far more than I could have mined by hand in a day. My eyes scanned the newly exposed walls, my torchlight dancing across the raw netherrack. And then I saw it. There, embedded in the wall of the crater, was a block unlike any other. Its texture was a dark, reddish-brown, with a swirling pattern that seemed to shift and writhe in the torchlight. It was ancient debris, a surge of triumph, so potent it almost made me dizzy, washed over me. I had found one. The process of mining it was nerve-wracking. Ancient debris was incredibly tough, as blast-resistant as obsidian. My diamond pickaxe, even with an efficiency enchantment, struggled against it. It took a full 10 seconds of continuous mining to break the block, a period during which I felt completely exposed, my back to the dark, open crater. As the block finally broke and the small, precious item popped into my inventory, I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. 1 down, 3 to go for my first ingot. 3 more pieces, which meant more tunnels, more beds, more heart-stopping explosions. The quest had just begun. I spent the next several days in a blur of digging, blasting, and paranoia. I encountered new horrors. In one of my tunnels, I broke through into a crimson forest. The air turned a vibrant, unsettling red, and the ground was covered in a strange, fungal growth. The forest was populated by piglins, humanoid pig creatures armed with golden swords and crossbows. They were neutral at first, their pig-like snouts twitching as they inspected me. I knew from my studies that they were obsessed with gold. I was wearing a full set of diamond armor, a grave insult in their culture. The moment they saw me, their passive curiosity turned to rage. A chorus of angry snorts filled the air, and they charged, their golden swords held high. I was forced into a desperate, running battle, my shield absorbing a hail of crossbow bolts as I retreated back into the safety of my tunnel, sealing the entrance behind me. It was a stark reminder that in the Nether, every new biome held a new and deadly threat. I would later learn to wear a single piece of gold armor, a golden helmet, to appease them. It was a small price to pay for safe passage through their territory. On another occasion, my bed mining activities broke through the ceiling of a vast cavern deep beneath me. I peered over the edge into a yawning, blue-tinged abyss. It was a soul sand valley. The ground far below was a writhing carpet of soul sand, and skeletal figures roamed the valley floor. But the real danger was in the air. Ghosts drifted through the cavern, their mournful cries echoing up to me. As I watched, one of them turned its huge, tear-streaked face towards me and let out a high-pitched shriek. A ball of fire erupted from its mouth and shot towards me with terrifying speed. I scrambled back from the ledge just as the fireball impacted, the explosion rocking the ground and sending a shower of netherrack raining down into the valley below. I had to be more careful. The Nether was not a static environment. It was a living, breathing entity, and it was actively trying to kill me. The hunt for ancient debris became a kind of rhythm, a dance with death. I would dig a tunnel, place a bed, retreat, detonate, and then cautiously inspect the crater, my sword drawn, ready for anything. Sometimes, the explosions would unleash a torrent of lava from a hidden pocket in the ceiling, forcing me to make a frantic retreat. Other times, they would break into a network of caves filled with magma cubes, bouncing, fiery slimes that split into smaller versions of themselves when killed, but slowly, painstakingly, my collection of ancient debris grew. I found a second piece in the heart of a basalt delta, a chaotic landscape of towering basalt pillars and blackstone chasms, where the air was thick with white ash. I found a third piece after a particularly terrifying bed explosion that nearly killed me, leaving me with half a heart and a ringing in my ears that lasted for an hour. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I found the fourth piece. I held the 4 pieces of ancient debris in my hand, their weight feeling immense, disproportionate to their size. They were not just rocks. They were symbols of my perseverance, my survival against the overwhelming hostility of this dimension. With the 4 pieces of debris secured, I made the perilous journey back to my base, my senses on high alert, my heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and fear. I had what I needed for the first ingot, but the process was not yet complete. I placed the ancient debris into a furnace. The flames licked at the ancient, fossilized material, and after a few moments, it was transformed into something new, netherite scraps. They were small, dark, and unremarkable, but they were the key. The recipe I had memorized required for netherite scraps and for gold ingots to create a single netherite ingot. Gold, the very material that the piglins coveted, was a crucial component. It was a strange, almost symbiotic relationship between the overworld and the Nether. I had a small supply of gold with me, and I carefully placed the 4 scraps and 4 gold ingots onto my crafting table. In the output slot, a new item appeared. It was an ingot, but unlike any I had ever seen. It was a deep charcoal gray, almost black, and it seemed to absorb the light from my torches. It was a netherite ingot. I held it in my hand, its surface cool to the touch despite its fiery origins. This was it. This was the substance of legends. But it was just 1 ingot I needed to upgrade my full set of diamond armor. I looked back at the shimmering, violent portal that led to the overworld. I was not done with the nether yet, not by a long shot. I needed to find 12 more pieces of ancient debris. The ultimate blacksmith's quest had only just begun, and the fires of the nether were waiting. The cycle of an infernal blacksmith began. Days bled into one another in the crimson twilight of the nether, marked only by the depletion of my food supplies and the growing number of scars on my diamond armor. The initial thrill of finding the first pieces of ancient debris had been replaced by a grim, dogged determination. This was no longer an adventure. It was a war of attrition against an entire dimension. The nether, in turn, seemed to be learning my tactics, throwing new and more elaborate challenges in my path. My bed mining technique, while effective, was a blunt instrument, and the nether was a surgeon of chaos. On one occasion, a particularly powerful bed explosion triggered a chain reaction. A pocket of lava, hidden just above my tunnel, was breached. The molten rock poured down, not as a gentle stream, but as a roaring waterfall of fire. I turned and ran, the heat scorching my back, the sound of sizzling rock filling the air. I made it to a bend in my tunnel just as the lava flooded the area I had been standing in moments before. I was trapped. Behind me was a wall of fire, and in front of me a long, dark tunnel leading deeper into the unknown. I had no choice but to push forward, abandoning my established network of tunnels and venturing into uncharted territory. This new path led me into a warped forest, a biome that was a stark and unsettling contrast to the rest of the nether. The air here was cool, cyan blue, and the ground was covered in a strange, turquoise-colored nylium. Giant, warped fungi twisted towards the ceiling, their blue caps dripping with spores that floated through the air like snow. The forest was eerily quiet, a welcome respite from the constant groans and shrieks of the other biomes. But the silence was deceptive. The warped forest was home to Endermen, the tall, slender creatures from the end. They stood silently among the giant fungi, their purple eyes glowing in the dim light. As long as I avoided their gaze, they were passive, but a single, accidental glance would provoke their wrath. It was a tense, nerve-wracking experience, navigating the forest while keeping my eyes fixed firmly on the ground. It was in this strange, silent forest that I found my 5th and 6th pieces of ancient debris. Nestled deep within the netherrack beneath the turquoise soil, the acquisition of each new piece of debris was a small victory in a much larger war. I established a new routine. I would spend a full day in the nether, mining, exploring, and fighting for my life. Then, I would make the treacherous journey back to the overworld to repair my battered armor, restock my supplies, and, most importantly, to remind myself of what I was fighting for. Stepping back through the portal into the overworld was a sensory shock. The warm, yellow light of the sun, the gentle rustle of leaves in the wind, the chirping of birds. It was a paradise I had taken for granted. The vibrant greens and blues of the overworld were a balm to my soul after the oppressive, monochromatic palette of the nether. These brief sojourns into the light were what kept me sane. They were a reminder of the world I was trying to protect. The world I was trying to become strong enough to master. My search for the remaining pieces of ancient debris took me to the most dangerous structures in the nether. Bastion remnants and nether fortresses. Bastion remnants were massive, sprawling castles of black stone inhabited by hordes of piglins and their British cousins, the piglin brutes. These brutes were a different breed entirely. They were larger, more heavily armored, and they wielded golden axes with terrifying proficiency. They were not swayed by gold. They were driven by a pure, unadulterated rage. My first encounter with a piglin brute was a near-fatal experience. I had stumbled upon a bastion remnant, its broken towers looming out of the crimson haze. Lured by the promise of treasure chests, I ventured inside, my golden helmet offering a false sense of security. The regular piglins ignored me, but as I rounded a corner, I came face to face with the brute. It let out a furious roar and charged, its axe swinging in a deadly arc. My diamond armor, even with its enchantments, buckled under the sheer force of its blows. I was forced into a desperate retreat, my shield taking a furious beating as I scrambled out of the bastion and back into the relative safety of the open nether. The treasures within the bastion would have to wait, but the bastions were also rumored to be a good place to find ancient debris, sometimes hidden in their treasure rooms. It was a risk I would have to take eventually. Nether fortresses, on the other hand, were dark, foreboding structures of nether brick that snaked through the nether. Often bridging vast lava oceans, they were home to blazes, fiery elementals that shot fireballs from a distance, and wither skeletons, tall, black skeletons that wielded stone swords and inflicted a deadly, withering effect. It was in one of these fortresses, while dodging fireballs and battling skeletons, that I found my seventh piece of debris, not in the walls of the fortress itself, but in the netherrack beneath it. The process of acquiring all 16 pieces of ancient debris was a saga in itself, a journey that tested the limits of my courage, my ingenuity, and my sanity. But finally, after countless hours of toil and terror, I had them. I returned to my overworld workshop, my inventory laden with the fruits of my labor. I smelted the remaining 12 pieces of debris into netherite scraps, and then, with a deep sense of reverence, I crafted the final 3 netherite ingots. I now had 4. 4 dark, heavy ingots, the culmination of my long and perilous conquest of the nether. Now, the final stage of the transformation could begin. I took my enchanted diamond helmet, a piece of armor that had served me faithfully through countless battles, and placed it on the smithing table. In the second slot, I placed one of the netherite ingots. The smithing table's interface glowed, and in the output slot, a new helmet appeared. It was my diamond helmet. But it was reborn. The brilliant cyan was gone, replaced by the deep, intimidating charcoal of netherite. All of my precious enchantments were preserved, now bound to a superior vessel. I took the netherite helmet and placed it on my head. It felt heavier, more substantial. The world seemed to look different from behind its dark visor. One by one, I upgraded the rest of my armor. The chestplate, the leggings, the boots. Each piece was transformed, shedding its bright, hopeful blue for the grim, unyielding black of netherite. Finally, it was done. I stood in my workshop, clad in a full set of enchanted netherite armor. The purple glow of the enchantments seemed to shimmer more intensely against the dark surface of the metal. I was no longer just a warrior in diamond armor. I was something more. I was a fortress, a walking bastion. The first and most dangerous part of my quest was complete. I had conquered the nether and forged its power into my own. But this was not the end. The armor was strong, but it was not yet perfect. The next stage of my quest would be a different kind of challenge, one that required not brute force, but patience, cunning, and deep understanding of the mystical arts. The enchantment game was about to begin. The forge was silent. The nether portals hum a distant memory. The raw, brutal power was secured, encased in the 4 pieces of dark, formidable armor that now sat on their stands, gleaming with a subtle, purple energy. But this raw strength was like an untamed beast. It was immense, but it was unfocused. To truly unlock its potential, to elevate it from merely the strongest material to the strongest possible armor, I needed to delve into the arcane, into the intricate and often frustrating world of enchantments. My current set, the one I had worn through the fiery hellscape of the nether, was well enchanted, certainly. It bore the marks of many hours spent at the enchanting table, a patchwork of useful but imperfect boons. It had protection, yes, but not always protection IV. It had unbreaking, but not on every piece. It was a survivor's armor, not a masterpiece. To create a masterpiece, I would need to become more than a blacksmith. I would need to become a master librarian, a master of logistics, and a master of the esoteric laws that govern experience and magic. My goal was a set of enchantments so perfect, so synergistic, that it would render me virtually indestructible. The shopping list was short, but each item on it represented a monumental undertaking. Protection 4 on all 4 pieces, unbreaking 3 on all 4, mending on all 4, and thorns 3 on all 4. Additionally, the helmet would require respiration 3 and aqua affinity, and the boots would need feather falling 4 and depth strider 3. This was the pinnacle of defensive enchanting, a symphony of magical protection, and the orchestra I would need to conduct it was far more complex than a simple enchanting table. My first task was to build the infrastructure. The heart of any enchanting operation is the enchanting table itself, surrounded by bookshelves. I already had a basic setup, but it was not enough. I needed the full 15 bookshelves to unlock the highest tier of enchantments. This meant a journey of its own. I needed wood, of course, but more importantly, I needed leather and paper. Paper came from sugarcane. And I spent a day expanding my small sugarcane farm into a sprawling, multi-tiered plantation along the riverbank. The rhythmic harvesting and crafting of paper was a meditative, calming activity after the constant stress of the nether. Leather was a more grim affair. It meant expanding my cattle ranch, a process of breeding and butchering that filled my chest with steak and my conscience with a faint, lingering guilt. But it was a necessary sacrifice. With stacks of paper and leather, I crafted the books, and with the books and wood, I crafted the 15 bookshelves. I arranged them carefully around my enchanting table, leaving a 1-block gap. The moment the 15th bookshelf was placed, the air crackled. Faint, ethereal glyphs began to drift from the shelves into the book on the table, a sign that the apparatus was now operating at its full potential. But the enchanting table, even at its peak, was a fickle mistress. It offered random enchantments, a lottery of magical power. To achieve the specific, perfect set of enchantments I desired, I needed a more reliable, more precise method. I needed enchanted books, and for that, I needed librarians. This was the true beginning of the enchantment game. I would have to build a village from scratch, or more efficiently, commandeer an existing one and convert it into a veritable factory of enchanted knowledge. I set out across the rolling hills of my world, searching for the telltale sign of a village. I found one nestled in a savanna biome, a small collection of acacia wood huts. The villagers milled about, their large noses twitching, their lives simple and uncomplicated. That was about to change. I was about to become their benevolent, but demanding overlord. The first step was to secure the village. I spent days building a high wall around its perimeter, protecting it from the zombies and skeletons that plagued the night. I lit up every dark corner with torches, creating a safe, zombie-proof haven. This was not just for their protection. It was for mine. A zombie siege could wipe out my entire project before it even began. With the village secured, the real work started: villager breeding and profession management. I built a large, central structure, a combination of a breeding center and a trading hall. The breeder was a simple but effective design. A small chamber with a few beds, a farmer villager who would harvest crops and throw them to his fellow villagers, and a collection system to funnel the new baby villagers into a separate area. Soon, my small village began to grow. The pitter-patter of tiny villager feet became a common sound. As the population grew, I began the process of creating librarians. I would place a lectern, the job site block for the librarian profession, in front of an unemployed villager. They would approach the lectern, and in a puff of green particles, they would don the spectacles and robes of a librarian. This was the easy part. The hard part was getting the trades I wanted. Each new librarian would offer a random set of trades, including one enchanted book. The first librarian I created offered me a book of Bane of Arthropods too. Useless. I broke the lectern, waited for the villager to become unemployed again, and then replaced it. He became a librarian again, this time offering a book of Smite I still useless. This was the grind. I had to repeatedly break and replace the lectern, cycling through the villagers' potential trades until, by sheer chance, they offered one of the books on my list. It was a process that required the patience of a saint. For hours, I would stand in my trading hall, breaking and placing the lectern, listening to the soft hum of the villager as their profession changed. I went through dozens of villagers, hundreds of trade resets. I created a system. I had a row of small cells, each containing a villager and a lectern. I would go down the line, checking their trades: Bane of Arthropods, Punch Eye, Blast Protection 2, Fire Protection 3. The list of suboptimal enchantments seemed endless. But then, after what felt like an eternity, it happened. A new librarian, in the third cell on the left, offered me a trade that made my heart leap. For 10 emeralds and a book, he would give me an enchanted book of mending, the holy grail of enchantments. The one that would make my netherite armor immortal. I let out a whoop of triumph that echoed through the quiet trading hall. I immediately traded with the villager. Locking in his trades, he could no longer change his profession or his offers. He was my mending guy. This was a monumental breakthrough. The success spurred me on. The grind continued, but now it was fueled by a renewed sense of purpose. I needed a reliable source of emeralds to pay for these books, so I created a villager discount machine. I captured a zombie, carefully transported it to a secure chamber next to my trading hall, and then had it bite one of my villagers, turning them into a zombie villager. Then, using a splash potion of weakness and a golden apple, I cured them. The cured villager, grateful for being saved from their undead fate, would offer me massively discounted trades. I set up a Fletcher villager who traded sticks for emeralds, and after curing him, he offered me 1 emerald for 1 stick. I had an infinite source of emeralds. With this economic engine in place, the acquisition of the other books became a matter of time and patience. I spent days, weeks, cycling through librarian trades. I found a villager for Protection 4, another for Unbreaking 3, another for Thorns 3. I found villagers for Feather Falling 4, Respiration 3, Aqua Affinity, and Depth Strider 3. My trading hall became a library of immense power, each villager a living repository of a specific, perfect enchantment. I bought dozens of each book, my chests overflowing with the shimmering, purple texts. Now, I had the components, the netherite armor and the enchanted books. But I still needed a way to combine them. This was the domain of the anvil. The anvil was a simple tool, but its mechanics were unforgiving. Every time I used it to combine an item or a book, the experience point cost would increase, and there was a hard limit. If a single operation cost more than 40 levels of experience, the anvil would simply refuse, displaying the dreaded too expensive message. This meant I had to be strategic. I had to plan the order of my enchantments carefully, combining books first to create super books, and then applying those to the armor in the most efficient way possible. And to afford these high-level operations, I needed a massive, reliable source of experience points. The small trickle of XP I got from mining and smelting was not going to cut it. I needed an XP farm. I decided to build the most efficient XP farm I knew of, an Enderman farm. This was another monumental project. It required me to first defeat the Ender Dragon to gain access to the outer islands of the End. I made the journey to the End my new, but still imperfectly enchanted, netherite armor giving me a sense of confidence I had never felt before. I defeated the dragon, a battle that was surprisingly manageable with my new gear. Then I ventured into the void, bridging thousands of blocks out to the outer islands. There, on a floating island of end stone, I built my farm. It was a marvel of engineering, a tall tower with a platform at the top, where Endermen would spawn, a small, 2-block-high chamber in the middle, where an Endermite, a tiny creature that Endermen despise, was trapped in a minecart. The Enderman, enraged by the Endermite, would run towards it and fall down a long chute, landing on a platform below with just half a heart of health remaining. All I had to do was stand at the bottom and swing my sword. With each swing, dozens of Endermen would perish, releasing a massive cloud of experience orbs. The green orbs would flow into me, my experience bar filling at an astonishing rate. I could go from level 0 to level 30 in a matter of minutes. With my XP farm complete, the final stage of the enchantment game could commence. I returned to my workshop, my pockets full of enchanted books, my mind brimming with experience. I set up a row of anvils, knowing that they would break under the strain of what I was about to do. I laid out my plan on a series of signs, a complex flowchart of combinations. First, I would combine the books. Protection 4 with Unbreaking 3, then that new book with Mending, then that even more powerful book with Thorns 3. I created a single, ultimate protection book for each piece of armor. The experience costs were astronomical. Each combination would consume 30, 35, sometimes even 38 levels of experience. After each operation, I would have to journey back to the end, stand at my farm for a few minutes to replenish my levels, and then return. It was a tedious, repetitive process, but with each successful combination, my masterpiece grew closer to completion. Finally, the moment came. I had 4 ultimate books, each containing Protection IV, Unbreaking 3, Mending, and Thorns 3. I had a separate book with Feather Falling 4 and Depth Strider 3 for the boots, and another with Respiration 3 and Aqua Affinity for the helmet. It was time for the final application. I placed my netherite helmet on the anvil. I placed the ultimate helmet book in the second slot. The anvil displayed the cost, 39 levels. Just under the limit, I took a deep breath and clicked. The anvil chimed, a sound of pure, magical synthesis. I took the helmet. It was done. The enchantments listed in its tooltip were a poem of power. I repeated the process for the chestplate, the leggings, and the boots, each operation costing a terrifying amount of experience, each one a success. Finally, I stood before the armor stands, my work complete. The 4 pieces of netherite armor now radiated a power that was almost palpable. The purple glow of the enchantments was so intense it seemed to make the air around them hum. This was not just armor. It was a work of art, a testament to months of dedication, planning, and execution. I had conquered the nether to get the material. I had built a village to get the knowledge. And I had tamed the end to get the power. The ultimate blacksmith's quest was nearing its climax. The only thing left to do was to test my creation, to unleash this unprecedented power upon the most formidable challenges the world had to offer. The armor was complete. It sat on its stands not as mere equipment, but as a monument to obsession. Each dark, netherite plate, now inscribed with a shimmering litany of enchantments, represented a distinct and arduous chapter of my quest. The material itself was a memory of fire and fear, of surviving the hellish landscape of the nether. The enchantments were a testament to patience and manipulation, of building a civilization only to exploit it for its knowledge, of bending the very mechanics of experience to my will. It was the culmination of countless hours, a fusion of the rarest materials and the most potent magic. But theory, no matter how beautiful, is meaningless without proof. The time for forging and enchanting was over. The time for testing had arrived. I needed to know, not just believe, that this armor was the strongest. I needed to subject it to the most extreme trials imaginable, to push it to its limits and see if those limits even existed. I needed to face the gods and monsters of this world and see if they would even notice my presence. My list of final exams was short, but it comprised the most feared entities in existence: the Wither, the Ender Dragon, a horde of creepers, and the unforgiving pull of gravity itself. My first target was the Wither, a three-headed, soul-devouring monstrosity, a creature that had to be summoned, not found. It was an optional boss, a challenge that many players choose to ignore, and for good reason. Its explosive skulls could tear through lesser armor in seconds, and its withering effect would drain the life from anything it touched. Preparing for the fight involved a return to the nether, to the dark, imposing corridors of a nether fortress. I needed 3 wither skeleton skulls, a rare drop from the tall, black skeletons that patrolled the fortress. My previous forays into these fortresses had been tense, cautious affairs. This time, it was different. Clad in my perfect netherite armor, I strode through the halls like a king. The wither skeletons, once a source of terror, were now a minor nuisance. Their stone swords scraped harmlessly against my armor. The Thorn's 3 enchantment pricked back at them, and my netherite sword, itself a masterwork of sharpness and fire, dispatched them with a single, fiery slash. The knockback resistance of my armor was a revelation. I was an immovable object, a wall of dark metal against which the tides of hell broke in vain. After an hour of systematic extermination, I had my 3 skulls. I chose the location for the summoning carefully, a deep underground cavern I had excavated, far from my home, far from anything I cared about. The Wither's initial explosion was devastating, and I wanted to contain the ensuing destruction. I placed the 4 blocks of soul sand in a T formation. Then, with a sense of grim ceremony, I placed the 3 wither skeleton skulls on top. The structure began to glow, to vibrate, a high-pitched, ethereal whine filling the cavern. The air grew cold. I drew my sword and raised my shield, a gesture that felt almost unnecessary. The wither materialized, its 3 heads spinning wildly, and then it let out a deafening, reality-shattering roar. A massive explosion of blue energy erupted from its body, carving a huge sphere out of the surrounding stone. I was at the edge of the blast, and I felt the force of it, a physical shove, but the damage was negligible, a single heart. The protection for enchantments had reduced the cataclysmic blast to a gentle nudge. The fight began. The wither rose into the air, its 3 heads firing a barrage of explosive skulls. They flew towards me, black, smoking projectiles of death. I didn't even bother to dodge. I stood my ground, my shield lowered. The skulls impacted against my chest plate. The explosions were loud, startling, but the damage was almost non-existent. My health bar flickered, but it did not drop. The armor was absorbing everything. I was immune. I charged forward, my depth strider boots allowing me to move at full speed despite the cratered, uneven ground. I leapt into the air and brought my sword down on the wither's bony chassis. The sound of enchanted netherite striking ancient bone echoed through the cavern. The wither recoiled, letting out a shriek of pain. It turned its attention to me, firing skulls at point-blank range. I stood there and took it, my sword a blur of motion, hacking away at the beast. The withering effect, the wither's most feared weapon, coated me in its dark, swirling particles. My health bar turned black, but the health itself barely drained. The protection ivy was mitigating that too. And as the wither took damage from my thorn's enchantment and my relentless assault, it began to drop experience orbs. The green orbs swirled around me, and I felt the familiar, satisfying sensation of my armor repairing itself. The mending enchantment was at work. The minuscule amount of durability damage I was taking was being instantly healed. I was not just immune, I was self-repairing. The fight was not a battle, it was a dissection. After a few minutes of relentless, one-sided punishment, the wither let out a final, agonizing cry and exploded, leaving behind a single, precious item, a nether star. I stood in the silent, cratered cavern, my armor pristine, my health full. The god of destruction had been swatted like a fly. Next on the list was the Ender Dragon, the final boss of the game's narrative arc. I had already defeated her once to build my XP farm, but that had been a fight for survival. This would be a demonstration of dominance. I journeyed to the end, stepping through the portal into the bleak, starless dimension. The dragon circled high above, a majestic, terrifying silhouette against the void. The island was crawling with Endermen, but I ignored them. They were irrelevant. My first task was to destroy the end crystals that healed the dragon. In my previous fight, this had been a dangerous process of building up to the pillars and carefully mining the crystals, all while dodging the dragon's attacks. Now, I simply walked up to the pillars. The dragon swooped down, spewing a cloud of purple, damaging breath. I walked right through it, the armor shrugged it off. I reached the first pillar and began to build my way up. The dragon charged, slamming into me with the force of a locomotive. On my first visit, this would have sent me flying off the pillar to my death. Now, with the knockback resistance of my netherite armor, I barely moved. I grunted, took a single step back, and continued building. It was absurd. I reached the top of each pillar and destroyed the crystals, some with my pickaxe, others with a well-aimed arrow from my infinity bow. With each crystal's destruction, the dragon roared in frustration. When the last crystal was gone, she was vulnerable. She flew to the central bedrock fountain to perch. I strode towards her, my sword drawn. She was a magnificent beast, the queen of this dimension. I felt a pang of something akin to pity. She was a force of nature, and I was a violation of it. I unleashed a flurry of blows on her head, each strike from my enchanted netherite sword taking a huge chunk out of her health bar. She took to the skies again. But it was too late. The fight was already over. A few more passes, a few more well-aimed arrows, and she was done. She flew to the center of the island, her body glowing with a brilliant light, and then she disintegrated in a shower of experience orbs. A waterfall of green that rained down upon me, maxing out my experience level and ensuring my armor was not just repaired, but overflowing with stored energy. I had defeated the two most powerful bosses in the game without breaking a sweat, but bosses were predictable. They had patterns, weaknesses. What about pure, unadulterated chaos? I needed to test my armor against overwhelming, unpredictable numbers. I needed a horde of creepers. I returned to my base and spent a day constructing a special testing chamber. It was a large obsidian box with a dispenser system linked to a rapid-fire clock. I had spent weeks collecting creeper spawn eggs from a special trading setup I had. I loaded the dispensers. Then, I sealed myself inside the obsidian box. The only light came from a single redstone torch. I flicked a lever. The dispensers began to click, and with each click, a creeper spawned in the chamber with me. 1, 2, 4, 8. Soon, the box was a writhing mass of green, hissing creatures. The air was thick with the sound of their fuses lighting. I stood in the center of the room and waited. The first one exploded, then another. Then a dozen exploded at once. My screen flashed white again and again. The sound was a continuous, deafening roar of explosions. The force of the blasts was immense, a constant, violent pressure from all sides. But my armor held the protection for, which also encompasses blast protection, was working overtime. My health bar, which would have been vaporized in any other armor, barely moved. I was at the epicenter of a man-made cataclysm, a storm of explosions that would have leveled a mountain, and I was completely unharmed. I could feel the Thorn's enchantment working, the explosions causing the creepers to damage each other. After a minute of continuous, hellish detonations, the chamber fell silent. I was alone, standing in a room littered with gunpowder, my armor unscratched. The mending enchantment had absorbed the few experience orbs dropped by the creepers, instantly repairing the microscopic damage. It was a ludicrous display of power. There was one final test, a simple but elegant demonstration of a specific, crucial enchantment. Feather falling 4, I journeyed to the highest point in my world, building a single block tower all the way up to the build limit. The ground below was a distant, blurry patchwork of biomes. The clouds drifted past beneath me. It was a dizzying, terrifying height. A fall from here would be instantly fatal to an unprotected player, even with regular enchanted armor. It would be a risky proposition. I stood on the edge of the block, the wind whistling past me. I took a single step forward and plummeted. The ground rushed up to meet me with breathtaking speed. The world was a blur of green and brown. This was it, the final, unforgiving law of physics. But my boots were enchanted with the defiance of that law. Just before I hit the ground, I felt a strange, gentle cushioning effect. I landed with a soft, almost comical thud. I took a single heart of damage. A fall that should have shattered every bone in my body, that should have splattered me across the landscape, had been reduced to the equivalent of tripping over a root. I looked up at the sky, at the impossibly high point from which I had just fallen. I laughed. It was a laugh of pure, unadulterated triumph, a laugh that echoed across the quiet plains. The quest was over. The tests were complete. I was, for all intents and purposes, a god in this world. The armor was not just strong, it was a statement. It was a declaration that the rules of this reality, the very laws of damage and death, no longer applied to me.